Welcome to Cut and Splice. This is Gil.
And this is Jason.
And this is Matt.
And today we're going to do a bonus episode based on a recommendation from our friend Andrew, who's our #1 fan, and the reason why we're here today, or at least the reason why we've started this podcast in a way. And we had online, we exchanged a few comments about The Batman movie that's coming out, having the very long runtime, which I believe is like 2 hours and 55 minutes or something crazy like that. So Andrew thought that would be an interesting discussion, and this is where we are. Yeah. So as far as specifically The Batman, what was your guys' reaction when you first heard about the runtime?
I think it's too long for the kind of movie that it is, but I'm certainly going to withhold my opinion until I, see the movie. For all I know, it could be amazing. It just, for that type of movie, it doesn't seem like, it's not a epic period piece or something like that would normally lend itself to that type of length. So it was a little surprising.
I'm somewhat ambivalent. I mean, until I can actually see the movie, I'm not going to really have an opinion on the runtime because, I mean, very possibly the movie needed the runtime. I mean, I think that a lot of people looked at the Dark Knight's runtime before the movie came out and thought, wow, that's really long for a superhero movie. And then you go in and watch The Dark Knight and it kind of just flies by because it's a really tight script and there are very few scenes that, just filler that you could cut out and, just make it tighter. So, I mean, the only thing that stands out to me when it comes to movies that are, I say over 2.5 hours, is that we should bring back the intermission. There's no problem with having an intermission. Just give people 10 to 15 minutes to get up, go to the bathroom, maybe get a refill of their soda or their popcorn or whatever the heck they want, and then go back to the movie and watch the remainder of it. I don't care if the movie's 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, whatever. You give me an intermission, and if the movie's actually something that needed that runtime, I don't have a problem with the runtime. Just give me an intermission.
Yeah, I do. And I was definitely going to bring it up, the intermission, because I grew up in Israel, and we always had intermissions there, to the point of annoyance in some ways, because some movies are 90 minutes, and borderline, you don't need an intermission then. And they would stop it at the 45-minute mark.
Yeah.
Over 2 hours, you really just want to have an intermission. If you don't want to have it for every movie, I would also borderline be okay with every movie having an intermission. It's just more comfortable. I think it makes it more of an experience. It only extends your experience by 10, 15 minutes. So it's not as if, oh my, going to the movies is going to take me 3 hours longer. No, it's just 10, 15 minutes. And it makes a lot of sense. People often buy extra things, and movie theaters make money on concessions almost as much as they do from the ticket selling. So it's and I understand that there was a rationale. I guess it's because they can do more showings is the reason why they don't do. At least that's what I heard at some point.
That's
And
my understanding as well.
Yeah, and culturally, I'm sure it'll be a big shift for people, even though, anybody who goes to the theater or to a musical, you always have an intermission. Even you go to see your favorite band and there's a warm-up band and then a break before the main band comes on. So it's like an experience. So why not in a movie setting? You can get that same experience, not extended by an hour and a half. It's just 10, 15 minutes longer. And then you're more comfortable. You can drink as much as you want, because if you do need to pee within an hour 15, that break will be coming. Yeah, I'm not sure why that's so difficult to do. I have no idea how people watch The Irishman in theaters and without like an intermission. But because that was like 4 hours or something. But yeah, I guess 3.5 hours it was. Yeah, it's a very odd cultural thing. As far as the Batman, I agree. I'm definitely not one that's like responds to things very strongly. You always have to assess. I'm not sure if I'll see the movie right away, but I'll probably see it at some point and give it a chance, especially if the reviews are good. And we'll see what it is. It's probably too long if it's in a series of movies. I've always felt like even the Avenger movies got like to 3 hours, the last two or something. Even those I felt like was unnecessary. They could have, especially because they're serial movies, you could have just condensed them a bit. But people seem to like them.
Well, in the defense of those
People complain about
movies,
the runtime.
I mean, those two movies particularly are like the culmination of like 20 films. I mean, the story they're trying to tell was enormous, and it was kind of warranted what they were doing.
Yes, there's a lot of characters. Like, so you really
Just a lot of story too.
a lot of
It's just
story.
big.
Yeah, it wasn't too much of a story, but it's just it's an ensemble cast. Of long runtimes that tend to be like Paul Thomas Anderson's movies, like the Magnolia and through to like Babel. Babel is like 2 hours and 20 minutes, and there's other ones that they're not 3 hours, but yeah, I mean ultimately I think movies can be whatever the length they need to be, but it does seem like in the modern age, I think we've almost gotten accustomed to movies being long. In the modern age, it's almost rare to see a movie that's under 2 hours. If it's a drama or even an action movie, it's pretty rare. I don't know as far as like what do you think the movies that you've seen.
It's definitely becoming more common for them to be long. I mean, I think there are still a lot of short, 90 to 100-minute movies. They're just not not as many as there used to be.
I mean, the tragedy of Macbeth actually clocked in at under 2 hours. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yes, which I was so happy about. Like I was like, great. And it's also,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, it is one of the shortest plays, right? Because I think most of the versions of
Yeah.
it have been.
I mean, some of his comedies are shorter, and there were some scenes cut or abridged or modified in that film version, but I mean that's a whole nother episode. But it was really well adapted, really well adapted. So,
Are you talking about a
yeah,
new movie that just came out?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good movie. It's worth seeing. It's definitely.
Well, I was going to say when you guys were talking about the bringing back the intermission idea, I think that would be a good thing. Obviously, I'm no expert on this. I did work for movie theaters and have friends that still do work for movie theaters and things like that. But I do believe that the main reason, like we said it before, is just to cram as many different showings, into each auditorium every single day. So, and I'm pretty sure that has to do with some sort of, you scratch my back, I scratch your back thing with the studios and stuff like that. Because obviously they're the ones that make the most money off the ticket sales, the lion's share of it for sure. It feels, I was going to say, it feels to me like to address the runtime and just to address problems with movie theaters in general, the intermission would be one of several things that they could probably do that would just make the whole movie theater experience better. Like it, and I don't mean like a list of things, like more like a series of things that need to happen, that all need to happen, just to fundamentally change the entire movie exhibition, industry, really. Not just intermissions, but also, bringing back like short films or cartoons, depending on what's more appropriate for the movie beforehand. and just everything that you could possibly do to make it more of an experience. Better theaters, better food, better everything. This kind of a trend to make more theaters luxury theaters, but in doing so, I think they all kind of like missed the mark. There aren't very many actual ones that are that good out there. But yeah, I mean, if you just kind of like get people to expect more out of the movies experience that they're going to, and then they might not mind paying a little extra, and they might not mind going out and seeing more of it, rather than we had that whole discussion about the streaming stuff, so I don't want to retread on that.
I do agree that maybe adding a couple, like $1 or $2 to the ticket price to balance it out and make it more of an experience, either putting a short, having the intermission. And I do wonder if culturally, to make that shift, you could always have sort of like what you have now, whether it's IMAX, non-IMAX, 3D, non-3D. What if you just have, because often, especially in the bigger theaters, there's usually like 2 showings or 2 theaters showing the same movie. You could have one with intermission and one without for the people that just really just are still used to it. And that could be a way to experiment with it, at least with movies that are, bigger. And the other thing I was going to say too is, because right now there's this culture, there's even articles that have been written about this, as people often look for spots in the movie where it would be a good time to go pee. That should not happen.
I can tell you exactly when I did that during Batman v Superman.
Exactly, they're memorable moments.
This is not.
They're not like memorable moments enough to be memorable.
No, this is no like. This is not a hate thing for the actor in any way whatsoever. But the moment I saw, like, I was already just staring like at the screen, like, what on earth was Zack Snyder thinking? This movie is so bad. And then the moment that Kevin Costner came on screen, I was like, we're having a vision. Like I was like, I don't need to see this, and I just got up and went to the restroom. And then I think I even bought some popcorn, because I was like, this is going to be 5 minutes of Superman having a dad vision. No. This doesn't belong in this movie at all. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, I will say before I let Matt go is, and of all movies, this was a good movie. Rogue One. For some reason, I recall in that movie, I think there was like a moment, like it was a good movie, but it was, I think, a bit long. And there's a moment where like they're about to descend on some planet or something, or I don't know, or it's like, connect with a fleet or something. And I'm like, okay, so this is going to be basically an action scene for like a good 5 minutes. So I can go, like, who cares about action? I'm not going to miss any story. I'm not going to miss any dialogue. So, so that kind of a thing. So regardless whether it's a good movie or not, you sort of can find these spots where, you might not lose too much plot points. And again, that should not be the case. That should not happen. And most movies, I just watched West Side Story, and it's, I think, over 2 hours. I lasted the movie, but that's because I didn't buy anything.
It's well over 2 hours.
Yeah, and I didn't get any drinks or anything. And that's sometimes is a strategy that I have, is I just don't buy anything before a movie. But this time was because of COVID and stuff, because I wasn't really going to eat in the theater. But it's I wish I enjoy eating in the theater. It does save money not to buy stuff, but I do like, because I don't go to movies very often. I like maybe getting a Coke and popcorn or some chocolate, because it's part of the experience. In Israel, I used to be very strict, and I didn't buy anything because it was just a way to save money and see more movies with the allowance that I had. But yeah, as an adult, I'm all for, like, having fun. It's just that I limit myself because I'm afraid of having to go pee in the middle of the movie.
Hear this, all you movie theater companies out there. Listen to this. This is a man who lives in Santa Monica. He has money, and he is not buying your products because he can't hold his bladder long enough for the damn movie.
Yeah, no, they're leaving money on the table. They're seriously leaving money on the table.
He wants to give you his money.
Exactly. In any case, so that was that. You go, Matt.
All right. So one thing that I wanted to kind of interject into this is there's a layer to the intermission that I think people kind of gloss over. And the only movie that I can think of that really used the intermission in this way was Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet in 1996, the 4 hour and 20-minute long full text Hamlet that did have an intermission, but it's clearly an intermission that was not there just so you can go pee or go out to the concession stand. It was a creative moment where he actually used the intermission. The intermission came after the Act 4 Scene 4 soliloquy, and when you come back from the intermission, you're just into Act 5, and it's a 5-act play. You go through the majority of the movie, and then there's this really poignant, important moment at the end, just before the intermission, where Hamlet proclaims, "My thoughts be bloody or be nothing worth," and then it just cuts to black, intermission, and then you go out. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience, I mean, I was only 11 when that movie came out, so I didn't see it in theaters, but I guarantee you that, yeah, the audience was pretty happy that they could go out, go pee, maybe get a refill on their drinks, maybe get a refill of popcorn, maybe, do this, that, or the other thing. But at the same time, it's a creative moment to put in an intermission. I mean, if he wanted to put in that intermission just for people to go out and go pee, it probably would have been after like Act 3. But he waited until the end of Act 4 to do it. And I mean, he picked that moment to let that sink into your brain for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's it's one of the arguments that I got online when I discussed this is that people said like, "Oh, it's gonna take you out of the movie." Like, and the example was so precious because this guy gave me an example. He said, "Was you thinking The Shining? If there was an intermission, it would like kill all the suspense that's been built up that entire time." And I'm like, well, I mean, first of all, Kubrick had an intermission in 2001, and he did use it creatively. Usually, when they choose the spot, they do make it creatively. It's somewhere towards the middle, but it doesn't have to be exactly in the middle, which is fine. And in The Shining, there's title cards, so like Tuesday, or, Thursday, like the whole closing day, and they're very suspenseful. You want to tell me adding a card in there, boom, intermission halfway through the movie wouldn't put you in suspense, like what's going to happen next? I think that would have worked, and I think most directors would enjoy like choosing. That's the thing. In Israel, growing up, the theater chose where to stop it, and it was something sometimes really abrupt and stupid. But if directors knew that there is an intermission and they choose a spot where you can either cut to black or have an actual intermission title card, if it is like a 3-hour movie, then at least then you're working in the intermission to the creative choices as opposed to some random idiot in the theater choosing where to cut your movie,
Yeah.
or some idiot like me choosing when they're gonna go pee. Like you want the director to choose when to stop the movie, not me and not the theater.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Matt, I obviously not as probably not as well thought out as or impactful as the Hamlet one, but when we saw the Hateful Eight in its like
right.
long
Yeah.
extended form, I think that on some level Quentin Tarantino decided that he wanted to put the intermission directly after the Samuel L. Jackson forced fellatio scene, just so that everyone would walk out of the theater talking about what they had just seen.
Yeah. No, that was another good example of a creative intermission.
Probably not quite on the Hamlet level, but somewhere
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean that was well thought out, and by the way, anybody who does listen, if you didn't see the 70 millimeter roadshow of the Hateful Eight, I pity you.
It was very fun.
Yeah, and synagasmic, but yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about the movie. It's a good movie, but it's not one of his best. But
see, you know what though? I'll use this as a segue back to what I was saying before. That's a good example of what I was talking about. I don't know, Matt, what we paid to go see that. I know it was at the Gil. What's that movie theater called? The good one, not the ArcLight one.
The Landmark.
Thank you, the Landmark.
The Landmark.
We went to the Landmark.
It was $25 a piece.
Yeah, and I mean, we're seeing a 70 millimeter print, right?
Yeah.
So 70 millimeter print with intermission and overture, and you know, for everyone who doesn't know, the Landmark is easily, in my opinion, one of the best mainstream theaters in all of LA. We got drinks beforehand. That wasn't included in the price, but we got to do that. And you know, there was like a program or something, you know, like a printed program for the whole thing. I mean, like, that's what I'm talking about. I want an experience, you know.
Yeah, it's still a bit steep at $25, but
well, yeah, I agree that's a bit much, but you know, like you were saying, if there was an option to do the two, you know,
yeah, and then if you want to choose,
that would be the way to do it. You know, you build two theaters right next to each other in the same parking lot, so that all the mall rats and the people who don't care about cinema can go to one of them, and that one can be just trash. And then you can have the other one with the really nice seats and the really nice bar and the really good food and all this stuff like that. And then that one, when you're paying the more money for it, you get the short film or the cartoon or whatever in the beginning. You get the intermission, if the movie's long enough to need one, and you know, all that jazz. But most importantly, and I really do think this is something that people don't talk about enough, one of the greatest things about the ArcLight, and the reason why I would gladly pay $1 more to go there than any of the other theaters, is if you're going to have someone pay more for their movie ticket, they should be able to walk in, find their seat, sit down, and enjoy a blank screen with no advertisements. None. Like, not a commercial, not a whatever little program that theater chain has playing to advertise all their garbage that they have going on. No local advertisements, just nothing. Just give me a blank screen and maybe some music playing.
Yeah, appropriate music to get you in the mood.
That would be even better. Yeah, appropriate music would be good.
Kind of like at the New Beverly, they sometimes
exactly
right, music. like music from Dragonheart. You know, terrible movie, great music. You know, that everybody knows. So yeah. But
yeah, one thing I was gonna say, like I went, as far as experiences, I went to see Phantom Thread at the Landmark, and we didn't pay extra. I think it was like $14-15, like the normal thing. And every person there got a brochure with that was kind of like a sort of like a magazine of pictures from the costume designs of the movie, because the movie is about costume design. Like he's a dressmaker, so they kind of, like, you know, to keep in the theme. So every single person in the theater got to keep one of those and take them home, which is kind of cool. It's like a memorabilia from your movie going experience. Is better than a ticket stub.
It's totally cool.
Yeah, and that was like one of my favorite movie going experience in recent years. Not only was it a tremendous movie, but it's just the fact that, like, that was a nice touch. You know, whoever came up with that.
I don't think any movie going experience is ever going to top when we went to go see that screening of The Shining. And, you know, the guy went up and announced, "Hey, we've got a special thing coming up after the movie, so just stay in your seats." And then after the movie ended, "Hey, we've got a 70 millimeter print of The Master. So, yeah, if you want to stick around for that, you're going to be the first audience to see this. I mean,
Yeah.
that was a hell of a thing.
Yeah, that was definitely it was a challenge because it was late, but it was there was no way I was gonna leave for sure. I had to see it.
Yeah, right. I
Yeah,
mean,
but I will say, I mean, a Phantom Thread is a much better movie, but The Master is a very good movie still.
Yeah.
Was P.T. Anderson there, or did he just give them a print?
It would have been nice. It would have been nice if he had made an appearance. It would have made it more worthwhile to say.
No, yeah, that would have been really memorable. Well, beyond memorable, but no, I think we just we just had the print. He didn't show up for it, but
I remember I reviewed the movie on IMDb like soon after, and I was like, finally, I'm like, I can be one of those people that like sees a random movie in like a festival months before it releases, and like because of the whole, they say founders algorithm thing, like the first person to post a review is oftentimes the one that's like re-upped, you know. So like my review for years was like the top one for The Master because it was one of the first ones.
That's cool.
But I will say one that competes with it is definitely the one that me and Jason went to.
The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight. The
Yeah,
Dark
that was
Knight.
definitely excellent.
It was definitely like, it wasn't the best theater, it wasn't the biggest screen, but
It was exclusive.
it was very exclusive. It was definitely very exclusive. Like being on the lot and everything. Like it was a very cool thing. But not
About
only that,
25 people there, maybe.
yeah, and it's just the fact of the movie itself. Like
Yeah.
it's for the first time in my life, I saw it just like most people working on a movie. Like if they did a crew screening, that's what it felt like to me, because you're seeing it before any major audience sees it, and
2.5 weeks beforehand or something like that.
Yeah, at least a month or something, and having that feeling of like, you know, you wonder, like people interview like musicians and filmmakers like after the fact, like when they make some spectacular piece of music or movie, and like while you were making it, did you feel like you were making something special, blah blah blah, and they usually say like, oh, not really. I mean, you always think that you're making something special, but whether or not it actually works out, it's anybody's. And you know, Pink Floyd said like when they first listened to a full cut of The Dark Side of the Moon, they kind of said like, oh wow, like we really did something special here. So sometimes you have a sense of it even before anybody else gives it a listen or a watch. But seeing The Dark Knight, I was like, I remember when the movie ended, I think I might have turned to Jason and said, like, people are gonna lose their shit. This is a complete game changer. Complete. Batman Begins was okay. It was a very good movie, but The Dark Knight just blew the roof off. And to experience that weeks before anybody else, most people, it's just. I don't know. It was like it would probably end up being like the most memorable experience, just because of the quality of the movie.
I remember walking from the auditorium like across the lot back to our car, and it was like we were just kind of like walking and just like saying like half sentences. You know, we were just like, that was something. Like, you know, like damn.
Yeah, Gil, I remember you calling me because I was visiting my parents for Christmas when you guys went to go see that movie, and I was to put it mildly, green with envy. But yeah,
and if you were around, you would likely be the one to go with Jason, not me. So I was very fortunate that you were on a visit. No, it's more likely than not, but which I'm totally fine with. But I'm very happy that it worked out the way that it did. And you know, me and Matt had our master experience, so we know.
Yeah.
So in essence, they need to really, do all these things that we're talking about, and then maybe nobody will have problems with long movies.
Yeah, as far as the yeah, but ultimately, I guess, it is a case by case basis. I do wish that there wasn't a necessity on the part of filmmakers to feel like, oh, if it's less than 2 hours, it's not a grandiose enough movie. I feel like there's a little bit of that going on. But
Yeah.
whether it's the tragedy of Macbeth or some other ones that do run under 2 hours, I think you can make a very epic movie in under 2 hours. It's really about the quality, not the quantity.
Yeah.
In spite of me saying that I'm totally fine with a longer movie for the right story.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite movies that honestly I still haven't revisited in like 10 years because it's a pain in the ass to get through is the Russian adaptation of War and Peace, which is over 6 hours.
No,
But
thank you.
but also movies like and we can talk about this with some of our top directors, but Sergio Leone's film Once Upon a Time in America is over 5 hours, and I mean that's a brilliant movie.
It's a bit too long. It's my least favorite movie of his because of the running time. I mean,
or 1900 by Bertolucci. Again, that's over 5 hours. I don't know. Also, both of which star Robert De Niro. So, um,
yeah, that one I'm also like okay with, but it's definitely not an amazing movie. I mean, I will say that obviously there's a lot of 3 hour movies, but The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is a very good example of a movie that's very long with very few characters in it and very little story, but it's magnificent. Like it's I think like one time I saw a documentary and maybe about westerns and stuff, and this film reviewer was saying like I remember like sitting in the theaters watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and it's like 2 hours in, and all of a sudden there's a scene that opens up and they realize that they've stumbled onto the Civil War or something like that. And it's like, holy shit, this movie's not even close to being done, and I don't care. Like, it's one of those movies where, like, I guess sort of like The Dark Knight or other ones. Like Lawrence of Arabia feels long,
Yes, it
but
does.
but The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, it's just you can't get enough of it. It's just on a whole other level. It's a very unique movie. So, but yeah, like it's a case by case basis. You can't. I don't know. I'm sure Matt likes those ones that he mentioned, and I like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I'm sure Jason has long movies that he's very fond of.
And I mean, not to prolong this conversation all that much, but just on the issue of when you look at Hamlet, Branagh's film was the first full text, 4.5 hour length version of Hamlet. And you compare that to like the Franco Zeffirelli version with Mel Gibson that was only like 120 minutes or something. It might have been 2 hours. I don't know. And I mean, Fortinbras isn't even a character in the movie. I mean, basically the entire soul of the text was cut out in order to serve the brevity of the movie, and it's awful. It's just not very good. And I mean, they got Ian Holm there playing Polonius. They've got a great cast, but it sucks because they gutted the entire soul of the text out of it.
Wow.
Brana went in the opposite direction. So I mean, it's there are certain stories that you just can't tell in 90 minutes to 2 hours. You need to actually give it time to breathe and give the characters time to talk and go through what they're actually going through. So
That's amazing, Matt.
yeah.
I could literally record everything you just said right there and replace character names, and I could say that exact same thing you just said about the new Dune movie and the sci-fi original, miniseries version.
Oh,
The new
wow.
Dune movie? I feel like
Yeah.
the original Dune movie maybe more so was
Well,
rushed.
that one, the theatrical cut is not even worth talking about because that's something else. But there are, like, I have a cut of the David Lynch Dune, which is much better, which is like I don't know, you can find it online. It's like probably 3.5 hours or something like that. It's much closer and better, but I'm just talking about the fact that the exact things that Matt said. The fact that this new one, they had 2.5 hours, and at the stopping point where the movie stops is right around where the mini series would end at about an hour and a half. So in like 90 minutes, the mini series told the story better than what the new version did. And the new version is beautiful and amazing. And I mean, I could talk about it for a long, long time. But the thing is, and the acting's impeccable, and all of those things I just said are horrible in the miniseries. The acting's terrible, and the effects are awful, and the whole thing looks terrible, and blah 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 blah. But just talking about storytelling, it's exactly like what Matt just said. It's like I don't know what they were thinking, but they cut out the whole heart and soul of that movie, and they still have 2.5 hours of the movie, and I don't know what the heck they were doing with it because it's just bad.
Yeah, no, I think Denis definitely has slow pacing. We've established with Blade Runner, and but I think that goes into another subject of conversation almost, and maybe we can plug it off of this.
Yeah.
But it plays into runtime, but it's adaptations. Like when you adapt books and different, like, even short stories sometimes, but mostly the books.
Yeah, sure.
It's very tough. Like we made fun of the Hobbit movies for overextending it, like where the Lord of the Rings nailed it as far as like taking 3 books, making 3 long movies.
Yep.
Then the Hobbit took it too far. And then other times there's books that are condensed to too short of a movie that you lose, like whether it's Dune or other ones. And I'm sure it's because you're so close to the text, Jason, that it matters to you more than most people. Like,
I'm sure, I have no doubt that it's because it's like my favorite book, pretty much, and everything like that. But also, just as evidence that I'm throwing at this out there, I recently rewatched it with my brother and his wife, and she has not seen other versions of Dune, so she didn't have any of this other information to draw on. And we had to pause it like every 10 minutes because she kept asking us, like, I don't understand what's going on. Why is this character doing this? What's happening right there? And I was constantly telling her, it's not your fault. What this movie should have told you 5 minutes ago was this, this, and this. And she was like, oh, okay, now that makes sense. And then we'd like start watching again.
Yeah, and I think she was reading too much into it. I think much like a Shakespeare play, like you're not going to get all the words in a Shakespeare play. You should just go along with it and try to experience it and feel the movie. I didn't lose too much. I got who's against who for the most part, and I've listened to the audiobook of Dune a while back, and I don't recall much from the book itself. And I knew what was going on. I even not remember anything about the actual story. I got enough, but I understand if she was like really getting into the specifics there, then I'm sure they cut out too much stuff.
I mean, I don't want to go too deep into it. We could do a whole episode about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, whether it's the like plays made into movies, like especially like Shakespeare, or whether it's books, there's definitely a whole thing there where it's a tough balance to strike.
Absolutely.
Yeah.